Dromomania, this uncontrollable urge to travel. Hi, I'm Sunanda, an experiential learner, a teacher, and a traveler. For 30 years, I have been a professional navigator for others. As an educator, I've guided students through subjects. As a mentor, I've drafted their future careers. As a mother, daughter, and a as a mother, daughter, and a wife, I was the one who always had the answers. I was the one holding the GPS for everyone else's life. But maps, they have a problem. They show us lines, but they don't show us what is on the other side of the lines. Most people look at maps and see borders. And since childhood, we've been told that borders are like walls, rigid, jagged, political boundaries that say this is us and that is them. For 3 decades, I have been teaching within these curated lines, providing my students with a safety net and a GPS. But on April 18th, 2025, selfishly prioritizing my happiness, I set out on a journey that most people call brave, my husband called crazy. My back screamed impossible. I drove from India to London, 65 days, 22 countries, 16,500 kilometers. From the Taj Mahal fading in my rearview mirror to the Big Ben appearing on the horizon. I was the only woman solo driver in a convoy. It actually gave me a unique perspective of being part of a community and yet being a master of my own space. When you travel across continents alone, you enter into a psychological state I call cognitive friction. Every language barrier, every language barrier, every mechanical rattle, every unnamed border crossing rewires your brain. This isn't traveler's intuition. There is data on the transformational power of this friction. Research by the Journal of Personality and Social Psychologists say that when you travel solo in unfamiliar environments, there is a shift in a person's internal locus of control from I hope things work out to I'm the one who makes things work out. A study by the US Travel Association states that when youth undertake high stake travel, they actually boost their social competency and professional adaptability. This is neuroplasticity, where your brain's executive function, the one responsible for problem solving and emotional regulation, is on an overdrive. You don't just see the world, you actually have your brain rewiring its hardware. Join me on reminiscing my journey into a coherent life story. The first toll the road demanded was your ego. We crossed into Nepal through a namesake border. Hospitality almost like home. And I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. But when we drove to Tibet, the road was bumpy and unsettling. No itinerary had prepared us for. It was a test on mental endurance and a lesson in calculated persistence. And then you realize that discomfort isn't a disaster, it's a paid price for a perspective that not many people have. And then the world became bigger. We reached Gairong and Tingri, quaint little towns in Tibet, where the scale of everything was marvelously small. The drive to Shigaste mirrored life itself, changing landscapes, dropping temperatures, snow capped roads. And then you realize that the smallest, the hotels were equipped with oxygen cylinders just to combat the thinning air. And then you discover that the best defense is often the simplest, like having a local remedy of crushed garlic in a hot water flask works miracles against the altitude. And then the road climbed, and I found myself in the shadow of the Earth's highest point, the Everest Base Camp, 8,848 meters. And my eyes shed a tear, not because of sadness, but because it was moved by the sheer audacity of the undertaking. You think you're the driver, the mountain tells you who's in charge. And the moment you accept that and stop fighting, you start learning. The second toll the road demanded was the fear we packed from home. China operates on a completely different frequency. Mandatory, magnificent roads, mandatory rest stops at every border crossing. At every border crossing. They had infrastructure unlike I'd ever seen before. They had the ultimate system where they would scan our face and pull out the entire travel history within seconds. It was jarring to see how seen we were. Driving through the Gobi Desert and the Mangao caves, an enchanting land of Buddha, was an experience in itself. Everything I knew about the place was wrong. The drive from China to Kyrgyzstan took us 24 hours. No decent rest stops. Barely any food. Heavy rainfall that made the road treacherous as the night deepened. Our wipers rendered purposeless. Our cars were skidding around the dark curves. And on those mountain roads, I saw the most devastating accident. Not on the news, but right in front of my eyes. Fear stopped being abstract. And then the stans, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, the land where we've been told to fear before we even set foot in them. Our drive to Tashkent and Aktobe, we didn't find enemies. We actually found fellow travelers asking us for photographs, not because we were foreigners, but because they respected the sheer grit of the journey. And that's when you realize that your version of life is just one in a billion. You stop seeing others, you start seeing yourself in them. An open mindset is not a philosophy, it becomes a muscle that you flex every time you choose curiosity over suspicion. The third and final toll the road demanded was the line itself, where the map disappears and the drive begins. Driving to Russia, Astrakhan, the slopes of Mount Elbrus, and Flagdon, we encountered a universal language of kindness that required no translation. Georgia, the food there was like a conversation between Asia and Europe. Cultures don't just clash at the borders, they actually bleed into each other. Istanbul, a literal bridge between Asia and Europe. Watching the sunrise in a hot air balloon rearranged something behind my eyes. And then Budapest, and a vintage car drive at Prague. The borders were melting. 1 minute I was having goulash in Hungary and the next in Czechia. And then we reached Germany, where I took my Indian right-hand drive car on the Autobahn at 185 kilometers per hour on the road meant for the other side. This isn't bravery. This is what happens when kilometer by kilometer you dismantle the every belief that you couldn't. The lines now had vanished, and by Frankfurt, the line in my head had vanished too. Finally, on 21st June 2025, 65 days after I had left Gorakhpur, I saw the London skyline. My car covered with dust from 22 countries, but my soul was full. I didn't just drive to London, I had stitched together a world that we were told was falling apart. And as I turned off the engine, I realized that I hadn't just bought back souvenirs. I'd bought back a completely different version of myself. Not because I'd proved anything to the world, but because I'd proved something to myself. You know, it's been a year since I'm back. And even today, I think about the journey and the 900-kilometer day's drive with a glitter in my eye. I still live off the rich memory dividends of the trip of my lifetime. Recalling the physical tension around Everest, the social mystery around Uzbek, the geographical vastness around European Union, taught me more about risk assessment than any textbook ever had. We often think of polymath as someone who has multiple degrees on their wall. But the road gave me an entirely different definition, that of radical adaptability, where you take the raw grit of the road and apply it to the complex logic of a boardroom. And then you realize that you aren't just one thing. You're a sum of all the friction points you've had the courage to overcome. As an educator, I can tell you this, that true growth is not in the comfort of a curated classroom. It's in the tension of the unknown. So my message to all of you, especially the youth in this room, is that you don't have to travel to London, but you sure have to get off your passenger seat. Seek the friction. Don't choose the easiest path available. Choose the one that actually solves the problem. Trust your own mechanics. You have more grit than you can imagine, but it only activates once the safety net is gone. And finally, find your soul sovereignty. Be the only one responsible for your direction. Borders are scars on earth if you let them be. But if you travel, truly travel, you actually become the thread that sews these pieces together. So don't wait for the right time. Don't wait till you're ready. The road will make you ready. You don't have to be a dromomaniac. Your journey begins now. I'm Sunanda, a traveler through life, and that's my time. Thank you.